Welcome to episode 3 of Cooped Up Cooking. Today we're going to be doing a bit of brunch food. We're going to be cooking up our own beer bread, and we're also going to be making frittata to go with that as well. So beer bread is one of my favorite breads to make. It requires a handful of ingredients at home. It does require beer. I know that some of you might not have that in your homes right now, so I am going to offer an alternative bread recipe, an Irish soda bread. But I want to teach you this one because this one's my favorite. So let's come over and I'll show you the ingredients. Okay guys, so the first thing I'm going to talk about is some of the ingredients that aren't necessary but will be a little bit of something extra to add to your bread. You can swap these out and change them for ingredients you have at home. I'll offer a few alternatives. I often use sunflower seeds and pumpkin seeds, but today I'm doing a little bit of everything but the bagel seasoning. So here we have some onion flakes. This is a little bit of toasted sesame. Over here we have a little bit of garlic flakes. In the center there is a little bit of flaxseed meal. And then just right here, I didn't have any poppy seeds, so I'm just using a little bit of chia seeds for a little bit of contrast. So once that's all mixed up, that will look a little bit like this guy right here. So I've made a big mix so that we can use this for all kinds of different things this week. Okay guys, so now I'm just going to talk about the flour that I'm using today. I have a spelt flour. It's basically just like a fancy whole wheat flour. You could use whole wheat or white flour. This recipe is really not super picky. So go ahead and see what's in your cupboard and give that a go, alright? Okay guys, now we're on to a very important ingredient for this recipe. It's the beer. This part of the recipe, people often go, oh no, there's alcohol in my bread. No, there is not. It cooks out in the cooking process, so don't worry. The only thing that this is doing for our recipe is actually helping the bread rise. So we're using this as a rising agent, and we're also going to be using a little bit of baking powder to help that rise up there and give our bread a little bit of fluffiness, although this is a very dense, heavy German style bread. So this is a great recipe because it's basically a 2 dishes recipe, so you just have to mix everything in this bowl and then it goes into your baking pan, and it's very minimal dishes, so I love it. So right now what I'm doing is I've got my flour in here, and I'm going to mix in a tablespoon of baking powder and a tablespoon of sugar. So we're just going to mix our dry ingredients, and that's going to go in. And then what I'm going to do is I'm also going to add in a few scoops of the everything bagel seasoning. I want that in the bread as well as on top, so I probably put in about 2 tablespoons there, maybe a bit more. That one you don't have to be exact with, it's just how much you like. And like I said, I often use sunflower seeds, pumpkin seeds, just things that are adding, you know, lots of yumminess, a little bit of texture, and obviously some extra added nutrition. So we've mixed our dry ingredients together, and the next step is to add in our beer. So for this, I'm using a German beer. You can pretty much use any beer you want. The only beer I don't recommend is bitter beers. Anything like an IPA. If it's a non-alcoholic beer, you have to make sure that it's not bitter. But really, honestly, almost any beer will work. My favorite result has always been with something like a Guinness or a darker, creamier beer. But literally today we're just using like a regular ale. So yeah, so we're gonna add that in. And I'm using 500 milliliters of beer here. You're going to see the bubbles really come up. That's okay though. Add that in there. And then you really just want to be gentle when you're mixing this. So you're kind of folding it. You don't want to overmix the baking powder, and you don't want to overmix the beer because you want to still have some bubbles in there. Alright. The other thing we're going to be adding in is a little bit of distilled water, about a 1/4 cup of that. One thing I forgot to add when we were doing dry ingredients, but I'll just pop it in now, no big deal. Just some salt. I'm probably doing about a teaspoon for that whole bread recipe there, okay? Okay guys, so we have all of our ingredients mixed together here, beer, flour, all the other stuff. I'll post the recipe. I also have a 9x5 loaf pan. I've greased that, and I've also floured it for a little extra protection, okay? So grease it up and then dust it with flour, and that'll be a good barrier between you and your bread, okay? And then I'm just going to pop that into my loaf pan, like so. Just kind of plops in there. That's the consistency you're looking for, pretty dense. This is a very dense bread. and then you just push it in there, and I'll show you what I'm going to do to the top, okay? So come on over here. Okay guys, so I've just put a little bit of olive oil on the top of our loaf here, and I'm just brushing it with a brush. That's just going to help a little bit of our everything bagel mix fit on the top. So, just going to sprinkle the top of my loaf with that, kind of press it in a little bit. Okay guys, so we've got our loaf here, and this is what it looks like with our little sprinkles on the top there. We've got our everything bagel mix, and that's going to go into the oven. We're doing that for about 45 to 55 minutes, more on the hour-long end of things, but I'll show you what that looks like when it comes out, okay? Okay guys, so we've done the bread now and we're moving on to our frittata. Today I'm going to do a really basic frittata. I'm just going to do a little bit of red onion, a little bit of tomato, and then quite a bit of spinach because it wilts down. I have 6 eggs that have been whipped up here with a fork. You have the option to add a little bit of milk or cream to that. I definitely recommend using full fat cream if you do. It just adds a little bit of lightness and fluffiness to your frittata when you're making it, okay? And then in there, when we're cooking, we'll also just add a bit of salt and pepper. But those are our main ingredients for the frittata. Okay guys, so I've got my skillet heating up. I'm going to use my cast iron skillet to make the frittata. If you don't have one of these at home, you can use a casserole dish. And I'll explain how to do that in the recipe, okay? But I'm doing mine in the skillet, so right now I have some oil heating up in here. You could use veg oil, that would be my recommendation for you at home. But, you know, any fat that's gonna burn at a higher temperature is a good fat to use. We're doing a really basic frittata. We're just gonna do a little bit of red onion, some cherry tomatoes, and some spinach. And then I have 6 eggs done up here, and they're going to go into the pan as well. So let's just get started on this one then, guys. Alright guys, you can hear our onions sizzling away in our pan here, and that's the sound that you want to hear that will indicate that your pan is heated up to the right temperature. So you want there to be a nice sort of sound coming up. I'm just going to add a little salt. That'll help to break down the onions a bit faster. So I'm just going to saute these off. I'm going to add my cherry tomatoes in raw, and same with my spinach. They're actually going to go in after we've cooked the egg a bit. So once these have cooked a bit, we'll add our egg, swirl it around, and then we'll add the rest of our ingredients before we put this in the oven. Okay guys, we've come to the part here that is very important. You want to make sure your pan is nice and hot before the eggs go in, because they're going to cool it right down. So I have that up quite high with the onions sizzling away. And I'm going to pour my egg in. I'm just going to turn that up a tiny bit. We're on 7, so we're on a medium-high heat here. And I'm just going to add my eggs in, and I'm actually going to let that cook and sizzle a little bit. I want to start to see a bit of crust happening around the outside. Just a little bit, though. And I'll show you what I'm going to do. Okay, guys, and then you just come around a bit like this and swirl it. Fill it in. Alright, swirl it and fill it in. Almost like you're making scrambled eggs, but you want that to come back into this shape here. Alright? Now once that's like this, we're just going to sort of let this set now. So I want to add my spinach into the mix. I'm just going to tear that up a little bit. And then on top of that, I'm going to put my cherry tomatoes. I like to put my cherry tomatoes on the top of the spinach because it looks really nice. And I'm actually just going to pop that in there because that's going to wilt right over the top when we put that in the oven. And it's going to be delicious. And then just be adding these guys in. I like to do them face up, so when they're under the broiler in the oven, if that's what you're going to do, they get nice and crispy. And then to that, I'm just going to add a little bit of salt and a little bit of pepper. I'm going to switch off my element, and we're going to finish baking this one in the oven, okay? Okay guys, I've just pulled this out of my oven where the bread is baking, so that was at 375. And this one here has been in for about 12 minutes. And the other thing I did was I put it under the broiler for about 3 minutes at the end just to get a little bit crispy on the top, because that's what you want to start to see there. Okay? Okay guys, so you saw a really nice shot of our breakfast before. The bread was taking quite a bit of time in the oven and we were starving, so we ate our frittata, but our bread's just come out and it's still warm and it's beautiful and delicious. I learned one thing today about the everything bagel seasoning, which I haven't used before. Don't add it at the beginning when you're baking. Add it about 20 minutes in. Sorry, when you have about 20 minutes left at the end there, and you'll get a much better result. I ended up burning my onion and garlic pieces, so they're not as good as when I use sunflower seeds, but still delicious nonetheless. All we've done here is just put a little butter on here and we're gonna enjoy some warm, fresh bread.